Welcome to the video. This is going to be looking at this charger here. This is from SkyRC. It's called a Q200 balance charger. Now this is one of those chargers that has been a little bit interesting. There isn't an awful lot of stuff in terms of reviews on YouTube and on the web, so we thought we'd get hold of one because SkyRC make a whole range of these things and we're looking for a new charger, so it was a great opportunity to get our hands on one to see how it performs. Now I need to say a very big thank you to Banggood.com, that's where this one has come from, but my history with chargers goes back quite a long way. Originally I had an IMAX B6 charger, turned out to be a clone in the end. Only had that for about 6-7 months because the voltages weren't particularly good in it, and for any of you that are old enough to remember those, it had that problem where the output resistors weren't very well calibrated, so you ended up with batteries that said they're charged but they weren't quite. Then I replaced that with a Bantam BC610. That was a little charger that was like the IMAX B6 on steroids. It was fantastic. It even had a little application that you could stick on a PC so you could monitor it remotely. Only charged one battery. Again, had a very similar interface to the IMAX B6 and has been my go-to charger for the last 6 years. But one of the things I'm finding is that when I'm going to fly, with the bits and pieces that I'm flying these days, the different planes that are all using different batteries and different quadcopters and all that kind of stuff, I'm finding that I'm spending a lot of time the day before I go fly just sat watching chargers run, because you should never ever leave chargers unattended. We'll talk about the safety aspects in a minute. This was the last thing that I tried out. This is an IMAX B6, very simple little charger, only charges one at a time, does all the auto sensing. You can choose between LiPo and nickel metal hydride, and that's been fine actually. That's helped me charge more than one battery at once with the trusty Bantam. But I'm now starting to get to the point where I'm spending literally 2.5 hours before I go fly just sat waiting for batteries to charge. So let's have a quick look at this charger. We'll go through all the specs, we'll go through the stuff that I quite like, and we'll also go through some of the stuff that you just need to be a little bit careful of. Now this is quite an intelligent little charger here, and it actually has 4 ports. So there is one at the side, 2 at the front, and then another one at the side as well, and you get cables for each of these ports. The cables that you get are mainly XT60 style, so there's the main power connector, and you also get these little balance boards here that you plug the balance tap into. Now the nice feature on here is that you can actually turn whether or not you want to use the balance portion on or off, so you have any weird or wacky batteries that don't have a balance connector, you're still not snookered. Now the reason I really like these kind of external balance boards as opposed to kind of the inbuilt thing that this other charger has that we've just had a look at is because these pins over time do get worn and pitted. They do carry current and they're subject to a lot of friction when the connector is plugged and unplugged as well. And over time they get worn, and that's one of the things that can cause some weird and wacky voltage readings. So if ever you are having a bit of a weird situation where the battery voltages are jumping around as you're charging, it's probably these pins that are getting worn, and replacing the balance board is going to sort you out. And that's why having it inbuilt in something like this means that when you start to have that happen, then unfortunately you have to kind of take it apart and figure out if you can resolder new pins on it. So to connect everything up is pretty straightforward. The other things that are at the front here, hopefully you can kind of see these in the light, there are connectors by each of the charging ports for an external temperature sensor. We have external temperature sensors on the Bantam charger that we've been using for about 6 years, and they are very handy to have. It means that in the event of the battery starting to get warm or something weird happening, it'll shut the charge down immediately. Sadly, they don't come as part of it. They are available as an option. I really wish they'd have put 1 or 2 of those in the bag. There's an output here for a USB cable, so if you're at the field or doing something, you can charge your phone. It's a 5V 2.1 amp output, so you could charge all kind of things from there. And there's a little PC link connector at the front. There is an application that you can remotely monitor this thing on both a PC but also on things like a smartphone or a tablet. And then on the back, if I just unplug the power, The connections are pretty straightforward. You have a connector for the mains power, which will give you 200 watts of charging, and then you have a connector for your DC with an XT60. So if you're at the field and you wanted to run it off a lead battery or some kind of 12 volts charge, then you can plug it into there, and then you have a little power connector. Big fans at the side. In most of the time though, it's completely silent in operation. So let me just quickly power this up and I'll show you the main pieces. So there's the power plugged in. Now I would always recommend, for the purposes of the video, I am not going to use it, but I would always recommend you use a LiPo safe bag. Put your LiPo battery in there and charge it. Then if something untoward happens as part of the charge, then you don't lose your house. There's been a couple of people that have been unfortunately caught out with fires recently. And need to say a very big shout out to people like Nightflyer, who unfortunately lost the majority of his house and garage in a fire recently. And even somebody like Nightflyer, who is very sensible and takes all the precautions, can have that happen. So do make sure that you are always being careful when you're playing with LiPo batteries. They are very safe if you take precautions and you use things like a LiPo safe bag, that you store them in a storage charge, that you store them in a metal tin, that you put them away from flammable stuff. It should be fine. But this is quite a nice charger, and it has some quite cool features that also allow you to check how healthy the battery is. So I've just plugged in those two leads. So let's power it on first. It'll tell us that never use the charger unsupervised, which is absolutely right. We'll hit enter, and then here on the screen you can see we actually have the 4 different selections for each of the outputs that are on this thing. Now this is quite a nice screen. It's actually colour. It's pretty easy to see in most orientations. It tends to be a problem if you're trying to look at it from each side, but top to bottom it's really nice and clear, and that tends to be the way you're going to look at it anyway. So we have the leads plugged into C, so we're going to select C, and then we can set everything up before we plug the battery in. So what we're going to do is we can have LiPo batteries, we can have LiFe batteries, LiLo batteries, LiHV, so it will do HV batteries, which is something that I needed this for because my other chargers are so old they don't do that. Nickel metal hydride, NiCads, good old lead acid batteries. Also has something called a battery meter where you can read off the battery voltages, and you can also measure battery resistance. Now that is really interesting. We'll have a quick look at that in a sec. And then you can do system settings. If you look at the system settings, there's things like safety timer, the maximum capacity that will go in a battery, whether or not there's a temperature cutoff, which would be really useful if we'd have had the temperature sensors. Things like the rest time if you're doing cyclical charging of something like nickel metal hydride, the sensitivity for each of the things, whether or not you hear beeps, and whether or not you can turn the balance connections on and off for the charge that we're about to do. Now you can also set the power for the charger in each of the individual settings. You have it all written here, so it's a maximum of 200 watts on AC power, and you can decide how that's attributed. So let's come out of that. Let's select LiPo battery and hit start, and here then, exactly like probably a million chargers that you've seen before, very similar to the iMax B6, identical to the Bantam, so this is really good for me. I can figure out what the heck I'm doing. I'm going to set it to charge. Now this is a 1800 milliamp hour pack, so we're going to hit enter and change that to 1.8 amps. It is a 3S pack, so we're going to stay on 3S. So now that's all set, we'll plug it in. I always plug the power connector in first, and then the balance connector. And again, if I was doing this for real, this would be going into a LiPo safe bag, and then we hit and hold enter. It'll check that the battery that I've said it is, and if we're happy, it says we said it was a 3-cell. It can see it's 3-cell. Hit go, and it'll start to charge the battery. Now, what's going to happen here is as it gets more comfortable with what the battery is, it'll start to ramp up the current. We can see the actual cell count as well. If I can turn that in, hopefully you can see the screen. We have a little indicator there to show you roughly where it is, about 41%, and the kind of charge that we're doing, which is balance, how long it's run, and how many milliamp hours have gone into the battery. If you press the plus key, then it will show you the individual cell voltages. I've been playing with this for the past 2 or 3 days and charging packs with it. This seems pretty spot on actually. When I take the pack off and using it with some of my multimeters and voltage testers that I use in electronics, it's pretty spot on, which I'm quite impressed about, because sometimes it can wander about. If we press plus again, it'll tell us the level of charge in the battery, 44%, the average cell count, and if we press it again, it'll go back and show us the individual cells. If we hit start, it takes us back to the beginning. Now, if we wanted to then charge another battery, we could plug another set of leads that come with a kit into another one of the ports, go into that port, and again do exactly the same thing with how we want to do it. So that's how that piece works. So what we're going to do then is let me show you how the applications work. So you can download the applications from the various stores. I've tried to put it on an Android device. My Android tablet is a little bit older and it came up with a problem about BLE, Bluetooth Low Energy. Unfortunately on my little tablet there's a problem with that, so I can't use it. So I'm going to use the good old iPhone. So let me start the application. So using Bluetooth, what we can do here is remotely monitor how that charge is going, and on the phone we can see what it is. It's a LiPo charge, the number of cells, the current that's currently going in, and the different voltages as well. And we can see, if we click around, it'll actually look at each of the other channels too. Now we can actually, believe it or not, set it up in here as well, and it will actually send all the information across. Personally, I like to set things up actually at the device. I don't trust wireless that well, particularly when it comes to things like LiPos. But that is a really nice feature. There's also a PC application that if you are on a PC, so having a tablet by the side of this showing all the information is great. It's also useful to kind of watch the charge over time on different graphs too. Last thing I'm going to show you, which is a really cool feature, is measuring internal resistance and how that can show you whether or not a battery is happy or not. Now, the battery that's on here has had a couple of, well, quite a few flights thinking about it on it. It tends to be used in some of the more high performance quadcopters that we're running on 3S here. So if I want to check the internal resistance, typically measured in milliohms, it's dead easy. We just stop the program that's going on. We go and select the battery resistance, hit enter. It will then check the battery resistance and tell us what it can see. Now at the moment we can see that cell 1 is 5 milliohms, cell 2 is 8 and cell 3 is 9. Now a reading below 5 is probably a brand new battery that's never ever being used. That is kind of stellar levels of internal resistance. Anything between about 5 and 10 is good, so very happy. So cell 3 on this one seems to be showing a little bit of age, but this is absolutely fine for use for months to come. So we'll plug in one of our new graphene 1.34 cells that we're using with some of the racing quads at the moment. Let's just whack that in. Again, battery resistance. See, that's 5, 6 and 7, so that's quite a new pack. That's only had a handful of flights on it, so again that's in really great condition. Let me show you a battery that's coming to the end of its useful life. So this is an Align battery that I used to fly with the 450 quads. It gets used for all kinds of things here, even doing things like running the battery powered hot glue gun. So let's just plug this in. Battery resistance 13, 15 and 15. So I would say that anything below 5 is really fantastic. 5 to 10 is a good battery that's going to give you many months of happy flying. Anything between 10 to 20 is average, which is what this looks like. Anything over 20, personally I wouldn't use that pack. It's probably time to retire it and dispose of it in the proper way. So over the next couple of months, I'm going to continue to use this charger. I'm quite impressed with it, how it's worked. I love the idea that I'll be able to charge multiple batteries at once. Don't forget though, do make sure that you're using something like a LiPo safe bag whenever you're doing any charging. And we'll have another look at this probably around the festive season, and I'll give you a report on how it's been day in, day out as my primary charger. Thank you for taking the time to watch that video. There are lots of other videos on the channel and they're carefully ordered into playlists, so you may find that there are other videos on this same subject that you can go and watch. So I would recommend going into the playlist area of Painless 360 YouTube channel and looking around and seeing what there is. You never know what you might find. Thanks for watching. Please like, subscribe, and happy flying.